Woof. I just saw the feel-good movie of the year. I just saw Joker. I guess it's a Batman movie. I feel like even Batman would kind of look at this and be like, damn, boy. Okay, that might be... Batman obviously has very dark stories. But this is... It's good. It's very good. It's definitely not pleasant. And it's interesting because it's not a movie that really has a high body count or anything like that. But it's still just so... It's so hard to watch in so many scenes. And, which is the idea. After it was done, like nobody was applauding or anything like that. And again, I don't think that's because people disliked it. I think they either A, didn't know what to think of it, or B, were just like so sort of taken in by it. And it's interesting because you watch the trailers for this, you kind of get an idea of what it's going to be like, sort of this Scorsese-esque telling of like Joker's origin story. And first of all, what I like, even though it obviously has seen, a lot of Scorsese movies and stuff like that, it doesn't feel like a Scorsese movie. It doesn't feel like, okay, well, this guy is just taking Scorsese style and running with it. It is still, this very, it's still its own thing. I was never looking at thinking like, oh, okay, well, that soundtrack, that sounds like Scorsese. Well, this shot, all of these is like what Scorsese does all the time. It's like, no, every once in a while there's a little nod here and there. And like I said, you can definitely feel like it was inspired by it, but it's not... I wouldn't guess that this was either directed by Scorsese or like someone that's like, I want to be the next Scorsese. So yeah, I really dig that. Like everyone is saying, Phoenix is fantastic in it. What I really like that this movie does, and it does this a lot, it sort of lures you into this sense of going in one direction, like what a movie that's not very smart would do, in a sense that, like, knowing the Batman universe and the characters and stories and stuff, where it keeps luring you into thinking, no, we're gonna do this, and it's like, no, we didn't, and actually, here's what we're doing, and that actually tells you more about the main character. This is a spoiler-free review, and but one of the things is there's very early on, you hear him laugh. And my first thought watching this is, oh, it's this kind of movie. Oh, no. And I won't give it away. But you kind of see it. And maybe you'll get the same thought, like, oh, like this is kind of film we're seeing. But they do something very clever with the laugh and why he laughs, that when you find out what that is, just immediately you're like, oh my god, what they can do with this, like not just here, but like in future movies. I'm assuming they're gonna do future movies, and it's such a smart idea, and it's such a smart kind of twist on like why the Joker laughs, and it's like, well, is it because of this reason or that reason? And it's so smart. There's also elements where it kind of looks like, oh, well, this, maybe one character isn't being as developed, or maybe there's like a twist in the movie where you'll be like, wait, what? In the Batman universe? Huh? And then they kind of say, no, we're not doing that, but it does still connect. Take a look at this, which is so smart. I like a movie that kind of tricks me like that, into thinking it's going to do something really stupid, and it's just like, gotcha! And not only did we get you, but it's actually going to really serve, the story here and the character psyche and such. So I really dig that. The movie as a whole, the kind of disturbing element that, when I say I leave and I'm just like, I feel like this weight. Like I said, it doesn't really rely as much on, I would say, violence, though there are some violent scenes, definitely. I say it's much more about not just it's not just even really the how, it's just the why, which is what a movie like this should be doing. And it's spelled out and it's not spelled out. It's one of those things where after I left, like I said, and nobody quite knew what to make of it, and I like a movie that can do that. Even now, I feel like I kind of gotta let it sit, but it made an impact on me. Which honestly, this year, you've been watching my reviews this year, for like Lion King and Toy Story and all that stuff. I just haven't been that blown away. Like I'm not super disappointed. I don't think there's too much that's like god awful or anything. But I just haven't gotten into this year with movies, or at least nothing's leaving that big an impact. And this left like a big impact on me. I just left just like, man, like there's some scenes where I didn't know, like, it's rare that I say this, but I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Particularly, there's a scene where he goes up on stage, and it is just like, it's so uncomfortable. I mean, it's really hard to watch, but it's also a little funny. I'm not gonna act like there's much comedy in this movie, but it's kind of great when there is. Because everybody, again, I mean, there's just some scenes people are just on the edge of their seat, like, what is this dude gonna do? And that, and it either leads to something awful that you're like, oh my god, or it just leads to something really funny, which is kind of what the Joker is. I say one thing that's kind of missing is, but by the end of this movie, it feels like they're trying to set up that it's like, and now here he is, the Joker, fully, kind of realized, or off he goes to do, to be the character we all know. And I didn't quite get that. I still got he was, for lack of a better way of putting it, finding his own laugh, finding his own voice. And because the Joker, to me, one of the big essential elements of him is that he's both in control and out of control at the same time. And by the end of this, I still felt he was out of control. Like some things were in his control, or like, not even that, like he had the illusion that things were in his control sometimes. And, where it's still like, nah, like he's still finding his footing in his big shoes or whatever. So I don't know if that's kind of like what they were going for at the end. I'm like, I don't know if I'm there yet, but I'm down for seeing another movie about it. Man, how do you follow this up, man? How do you do Batman after this? Well, like so much of this, I'm just like, where do you even go from here, man? There's so much in DC right now. Like, I don't know how they're gonna connect all this stuff, with these different actors and some leaving and then just these totally different tones. But that's also what's kind of fun about it right now, too, where when you see a Marvel movie, and I like Marvel movies, but when you see one, you know what you're gonna get. There's this very distinct style. It's a very charming style. With DC now, there's this sense that it's like, in one way, they're kind of still staying true to their kind of overly dark roots that they started with these movies. We always said, man, you gotta lighten up and stuff. But this is an example of something that is overly dark. I mean, goddamn, this is like incredibly dark, but it's so smart about it, and it's so, I don't want to say emotional. It somehow it does feel genuine, which is. There's so many scenes in this movie where I felt like, man, you could so easily go too far with this in terms of like it feeling phony, and that's why, like, the scene with introducing the laugh and some other scenes, I'm like, oh, they're doing it, they're doing like the old school DC stuff, but then they don't, and they kind of bring it back to this gritty, uncomfortable world that kind of exists in his head. And I think the big thing that maybe one of the reasons like people kind of left like, not necessarily, applauding or yay or anything like that is I don't think they know necessarily what to take out of it. Which again, I don't think is a bad thing. This is something that brings up some kind of challenging ideas that have definitely been tapped with in other films. I mean, everything that you see in the trailer, it looks like Taxi Driver, and some other Scorsese flick. A lot of like films from the 70s and stuff. I mean, this really, even the Warner Brothers logo in the opening is like the old 70s logo. So it definitely has that gritty, uncomfortable 70s cinema feel to it. I mean, it just feels like a movie right out of there. And a lot of people say, man, they kind of missed that. They missed that, really taking that chance and taking those risks. And, in my opinion, it pays off here. But with that said, I can see someone easily not liking this movie. I can see somebody saying, yeah, it kind of trails off and gets lost in itself, but I kind of argue that's the point too. I don't think this is a movie that's necessarily gonna like please everybody. Like, I don't know if it's gonna be like this universal acclaim, even though like, before it was even released here, I mean, it was getting praise at festivals and stuff like that, getting like standing ovations and everything. And I can see why, but I don't know. I mean, nobody has the exact same reaction, obviously, but I can't see like a mass, like the majority, everybody just falling in love with this movie. I can see a lot of people just being like, I want no part of this. Like, this is not even because it's like, quote unquote, too dangerous or anything like that, but just more there's a sense of, it gets so lost. It kind of in its own, I don't want to say in its own world, but there is a sense that it just kind of really loses itself to kind of the insanity of this character and what little thread he's holding on to. And, and it's not quite the stuff where, like, in old 70s strip-out movies, you suddenly have, like, these hallucinations or, this weird abstract art, which I love that in movies, don't get me wrong, especially in 70s movies. But it doesn't really do that. I mean, this is more like just getting very emotionally lost, to a point where, like I said, I mean, some scenes I'm like, oh man, well, this movie's good, but man, this character's really underdeveloped, or this character, they're really not doing much with, him or her or something. And then you kind of find out why. And it's kind of reflecting the world he's living in, of what's focused on and what isn't, and what's real and what's not. So I can see a lot of people just going in and just being really uncomfortable by this, especially near the end. I feel like it starts off, like exactly like what you think you're gonna see. You're seeing this guy, just who's awkward, and he's kind of a little kooky, and he's slowly going nuts and stuff like that. But by the second half, and I would even say like the last third, you were just in this permanent, at least I was in this permanent uncomfortable state, which is fantastic. Again, I don't feel that much in movies. At least this year, I really don't feel that much in movies. That feeling, that uncomfortable feeling of, I don't know where this is going, and I'm so squeamish in my seat right now, and I don't get that feeling too often. So for a film to do that now, especially a DC film, which like I've been saying recently, have been kicking out of the park, man. Yeah, or hitting out of the park, I should say. Yeah, they do that in soccer, right? They kick it out of the park. But yeah, I think they've really been doing fantastic work here. It's really something. I think I still gotta let it sit for a little bit. Like I said, I mean, because it is a lot of like heavy ideas, but does it all balance out? Like I feel like it does, but this is something where I don't think I can just rush in and be like, perfect, wonderful. I mean, it's one of those where, because it is also like, it's a DC movie, it's Batman, should you be like, dude, lighten up? I mean, even The Dark Knight is a comic book movie, but I mean, I don't know. I like films that kind of take that extra step, but do it in a smart way, do it in a clever way. So yeah, I'll say I recommend it, but it's definitely not, it's hard to say it's just a Batman movie, or a comic book movie or something like that. Like, it feels like it's kind of really, it's trying to make you feel uncomfortable. It's trying to make you feel uneasy, and it gets kind of, very anxiety provoking and all that stuff. And I feel like most people going in know that. if I did have like any nitpicks, again, without giving away too much, there's maybe about 3 or 4 scenes of him just slowly dancing like this, and it's weird. I'd usually be all over that, but something about this one, maybe because they made the rest so kind of gritty and real, whenever it kind of cut to that, like it felt a little distracting. Like 1 is okay. Maybe 2. You get into 3 or 4, it's just like, yeah, okay, I know the bit. And that always feels like a hint off. But I can see other people loving that. I feel like maybe if I was younger, like in college or something like that, like I would love those scenes. But for me, I'm like, okay, yeah, seen it, let's, But like I said, that I can see somebody else getting totally sucked into that. I also don't know about, like, again, without giving it away too much, sort of the timeline of, again, you see this in the trailers with the Joker and the Wayne family. I'm sort of saying to myself, well, wait, then how old are they gonna be when Batman stuff is happening? Like how does this work? But again, maybe it's not supposed to work that way. Maybe it's just its own standalone movie. I mean, maybe like Phoenix is just gonna do this, and that's it. And and then we have Margot Robbie's Birds of Prey movie coming out, and maybe they'll get another Joker. I don't know. Maybe they'll bring Jared Leto back. Yeah. Like I said, I think you can get an idea of whether or not that this is the movie for you. It's definitely not a feel-good movie, but I don't know how many people seeing it are gonna be like, yeah, I want just a good old-fashioned comedy, just a good old-fashioned rock'em sock'em comic book movie. It's like, I think it's not that. And it's really not until the last third that it gets like super, super violent either. The one other nitpick I have, and again, very, very nitpicky, the first time there's a murder in this movie, I felt like, man, that should have been a bigger deal. Like, it's a big deal, but I feel like, man, when somebody does that, I mean, just again, for the time it's taking and the realism, I felt like that should have been like just either a little more quiet or a little slower, heavier. I don't know. Something about that felt a hint off, but every other scene in this movie like seemed to hit the emotion that it wants you to feel. I think it wants you to feel uncomfortable. It wants you to kind of question things a little bit. It wants you to feel disturbed, and I think it works. And I think at the heart of it is a pretty damn decent screenplay. It's good direction. It's not just a Scorsese knockoff. Like I said, there's definitely elements, but it is its own thing. And of course, a great performance from Phoenix, who just like, I mean, he's great when he needs to be funny. He's very funny. When he needs to be creepy, he's very creepy. And yeah, it's one of the few times where I'm just like, do I laugh or cry here, man? I don't know. I like some of these scenes. So yeah, it's hard to say I enjoyed it, but I am glad I saw it. It did have a very, very big impact on me. So yeah, that's about it, man. Love to know what you think. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the reactions are to this movie. So that's about it. I'll see you next time. Take care.